All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. I'd like to welcome you, everyone that's going to join us at the round table and those that are in our outer audience. My name is Amir Muhammad. I'm the curator of America's Islamic Heritage Museum. My name is Amir Muhammad. I've been a member of the Nation of Islam. I guess I first heard it in 1971. Um, I didn't come a member to 73. And so for 2 years, I was under the leadership of Elijah Muhammad and the experience of the Nation of Islam. And one of the reasons why I think what attracted me to the Nation of Islam was twofold. It provided, I came up in a family that was, I had brothers, and I had these two big brothers that were technically that I could talk junk and I got my back taken care of. And then I had one little brother that admired me and loved me. I was his hero. But then went off to school and got college and got married and grew up. The nation provided that unity. We went out every day to work. We what we call soldiering, or as what the Christian would say, Jesus said, "Well, I'll make you fishers of men." Elijah Muhammad made us go out and fish the dead, made us fisher of men. We sold fish, we sold bean pies, the sardines, the paper. For us in Connecticut and Massachusetts, because we lived in an area that Black was the minority, we had to raise funds by going through the white neighborhoods, getting money for the schools and other things, and going to the Black neighborhoods to give out money for free. The nation also provided for me. There was a religious component for me. I never really totally in my heart accepted that all white people was devils. I grew up as a child. I have some good white friends, but I also knew that there were some white folks can be devils. I grew up with in fact, a friend of mine would come from high school, and he got we walked by a police department, and he was African American, and the other friend of mine was a white boy, and a cop drove by, and my friend said oink oink oink, and so the cop got him and grabbed him and arrested him and took him to jail. So me and our white friend went into jail to go check on him, and the white cops trying to harass us, man, calling us niggers and looking like he dressing like him, and So I knew there was a separation and a difference. I also, to my experience coming in, it provided a balance. I was coming in at the wean years of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I was blessed to go to what the Savior's Day, 74, and listen to him, and then see really Turks, or white guys be him introducing them as our brothers, those that believe like that. And since then, I've seen, matter of fact, I played the clip. Elijah Muhammad said the Shahada. He's talking about for those that believe in Allah, like those that say La ilaha illallah, Muhammadan Abduhu Rasulullah. Heard that from his own words. And there's a clip on that. I do see that there's also a brother that joined us. I do want to welcome him and acknowledge him, man. His name is Ajeen Bilal. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Well, alaikum assalam, if you can hear me.
All right. Oh, man, my brother. Man, welcome. Thank you. How you doing, Brother Bilal?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. Just listening.
No. You ain't call. I didn't call you in to just listen. I'm gonna call you in, man. We want to talk. I want to hear you talk. This is a brother, man. How me and Bilal met? I think what, 70s. No. 80s.
When I came to install Benjamin.
Yeah. You know, I met Bilal, man. He was a representative of Imam Mufti Muhammad. Bilal was coming in town. We was going through a transition in Richmond, Virginia, and they was bringing in a new imam, or bringing a new person to be an imam. And they had two choices. One brother named Alfred Muhammad, and this brother named Benjamin Kareem. Benjamin Kareem, lo and behold, was the brother that brought Malcolm to the podium the day Malcolm was assassinated. You know, and so we chose him as our imam. Oh my God, that was one of, oh man. So I met Bilal during that period of time, and I had a bookstore. I used to run a bookstore in the 80s, A&H bookstore. You know, it was African-American bookstore, Islamic bookstore, metaphysical bookstore. This was after the transitional years. But I before I even go there, because I do want to talk about the transitional years. Because when I talked with you earlier, Hakeem, you expressed when you came in the 80s. But in the transitional years from Elijah Muhammad to Imam Mufti Muhammad, you know, and that 75, 76, those years, man, it felt like, now you look back in Mexico, it felt like years, but remember them lectures? But now we listen for 5, 6, 12 hours. Imam Mufti Muhammad, a couple times, man, all day. You know, this of Yaku history. I got cassette tapes of Yaku history, maybe about half a dozen of them. You know, where he would just teach and teach and teach. You know, he broke down mythology. He broke down metaphysics and Islam and spirituality as it relates to our reality, you know, as it was, you know, where that when he came in, you know, because and when I came in, I was taught always that he was going to be the one that was written on the door that Farag said that W.D. Muhammad was going to be the one, that Elijah was just here to clean us up. You know, that the one that was going to come after him was going to teach us our religion. That was always my understanding. And then when in the early transition years, WD was going around the country talking to the leadership, you know, the captains, the ministers, and all the officials, prepping them and preparing them for that transition. So what he had to do, he had to empty us out. He had to bring about a bloodless coup, you know, where that you had a couple years of the Nation Islam. One of the years where that they didn't. The focus was on what the white man was doing to us. You know, that European, that disease that we see today, in that heart was really penetrating. Real hard in that environment. Then it was very oppressive, and so he was calling them out for what they was acting like, and he had faith and courage for that, because we saw what they did at the White House. I mean, at the Congress. Just think, man, what they was doing to us as a people. And Elijah stood up, you know, for that and defended that, and he fought for our human rights, human dignity. And Elijah helped create men. A lot of people marvel at Malcolm, you know, but you had before Malcolm, you had James Shabazz, the son of thunder. You had Isaiah Kareem, Sultan Muhammad, many others, and Lucius B.I., many other ministers that he had that stimulated and shown growth within there. But when the Imam came in, you know, for me, the nation, we had trucks, we had farmland, we had houses, apartment buildings, and Bilal could speak to some of that because he worked in one of those components, aspects. But when the Imam came in, you know, he told us that we built something, even though we saw the material growth, he showed us that there was something beyond, as the Quran talks about, there's a spiritual self, an inner self, a greater self, you know. He helped us separate that immediately. You know, he broke us away from what we physically had. and told us that our heart, our taqwa, our consciousness wasn't totally right. That we had to change our qibla. We had to change our focus into on focusing on worshiping Allah and the Quran and following Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But in that process, he had to detox us from the mythology of the Nation of Islam, the Yaqub history, the God concept mentality, that black conscious mentality, the disruption of the breakdown of our family mentality. So many of these things that he had to address, and then he had to address the outer racism that he had to address as a leader during that period of time. So what he came with language, what we used to call, what they used to say, mosque. Everywhere used to be the word mosque. Remember that? Mosque. You know, he said that really means, that's a French word. And you go look in the Quran, he said it says masjid. So he helped change that. He helped revitalize the word. They used to say salam alaikum. You know, he said assalamu alaikum. 3 P's. Assalamu alaikum. He helped. They used to say Muslim. He come with the word Muslim. Instead of saying Islam, al-Islam. Instead of a lot of times, even with the word Bismi, you know, we read it says and, but he said no, it really means with. You know, he for me, the closest person, and Bilal, you say something, thing, in mythology, the closest person I've heard come to break down mythology is Joseph Campbell, who did that PBS series on mythology of a religion. He's the closest person I've heard think something close like the Imam. On metaphysics, the Charles Fillmore, the Bible, a metaphysical Bible dictionary, mysteries of Genesis, things like that. The Imam pointed out. Now, another thing that I was sharing with another group that the Imam did when he came in with language, where that, and his father did before that, you know. His father, when the Elijah Muhammad was around, we was called colored people, coons, Negroes, and things like that. And Elijah Muhammad always said the so-called Negroes. And you said, you know, give us black pride. And so you had James Brown, Black Panthers, and other groups pick up on that black consciousness. So in the 60s and in the early 70s, the nation took on that flair, economics and nationalism. But then you had the Imam Muhammad come in, and within leadership, he came in like what they say, Jesus, a thief in the night, where he went in and went into the temples and ran out the money changers. And many of these masjids or temples around the country, you had ministers and captains that were in power and had influence and control a lot of wealth, a lot of people, a lot of energy. And the heart wasn't necessarily right. What he pointed out was that, and let me, I guess I put it in a Masonic concept way, where that we had grew out horizontally, but we didn't grow up vertically, so that our horizontal growth was not as a clean growth, a healthy growth. For me, an example is that one time I had a business that I had owned some houses, bought some houses with no money down and things like that. But I let some corrupt ideas to get in and come in, and it fell apart like quicksand. So I've learned the lesson then that you cannot let bad ideas, corrupt ideas come in. I don't care how quick you may grow out, or another way they may say, fast money, quick money, fast money goes fast. You know, you can't build things on corruption or corrupt ideas, or weak ideas and expect it to grow. So what he had to do, he had to come back and allow a lot of those things to go. And some of it he decentralized and gave people opportunities. Okay, go do for self. This is what you want to do. Give you the opportunity to do. But a lot of us wasn't prepared for that task of self-governorship, that task of being a Khalifa, a good custodian, Khalif in yourself. But things come like that in time, you know, in time. I've learned and watched an observation that, you know, we as a community, we as a people, or me as an individual, of just coming into Islamic maturity around the age of 41 years now, 40 some plus years, under the guidance of Imam Muhammad, and reading that Quran and following, striving towards the Sunnah, towards al-Islam. Another thing that you see with Imam Muhammad is that in 1975, I think there was like 83 masjids or temples in that transition. And a lot of that, alhamdulillah, you give that growth to Louis Farrakhan, because I think in 66 it might have been 50-ish. So he did add some growth to after Malcolm. Farrakhan added some growth to the community. You can see that statistically. But statistically, in 10 years, by 85, there was 176 masjids around in the United States, around the country, that was under his leadership. So there was like 100, I know one point there was 104% growth, and one point was 158% growth of masajids and communities that was engaged in following Imam Muhammad. I also, you see, with us, with Imam Muhammad, some ideas that he came out in concepts. He came up with the idea, and Bilal, I think you were somewhat involved with this, AMCOC.
And that was Samuel Bilal.
Samuel Bilal, okay. This, what AMCOC is that you had what you go Costco's and the other big warehouse stores. That was the idea. That was the concept. He was trying to get the community to get involved so that we could have an economic base. We could not conceptualize, or our inner gens, our inner ghosts, our inner self. We wasn't mature enough. We didn't do enough inner jihads yet to self-govern ourselves, to understand and foresee that. Another example you see with the Imam that he came up with an idea and contribute. That was he introduced to the market is shea butter. Before Imam Muhammad introduced shea butter and the Muslim introduced shea butter to the market, the Western market, American market, it was not there. Now you see shea butter everywhere. Shea butter is everywhere. We was not able to capture that market. You see that, and for me, the Imam, I'm going to go back to Imam, and I'm sorry for jumping, but the Imam also, for me, he came with language that, oh man, like I say, he used to give lectures for hours and hours, knowledge and just filling your cup. He was emptying you out, but filling you up, enlightening you, giving you understanding of things that you see. And really by him dissolving, allowing the community, the physical things to go, you realize the reality that everything is nothing but a man's idea, a man's concept. So when you walk down the street, you look at these buildings, these apartments, these stores, and everything you see, I realize this is nothing but a man's idea, a concept that he developed and did and achieved, that we can also achieve that. That was one of the lessons that I've learned through the Nation of Islam. What are some of the things that you learned, Brother Bilal? Brother Bilal?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yes.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah. What's your question? I mean, there's so much.
Well, some of the things.
Where you want me to start?
At this start, brother, some of the experiences that you had, what in the Nation, and where did you come in at, and what were some of the jobs that you did?
Okay. I came in the community on the West Coast in Portland, Oregon. We were Pantherizing out there at the time from the East Coast, from the West Coast. And I'd already, I grew up in Harlem and I had known Benjamin. That's where I'd known Benjamin as a child, but we were doing that time. Our position was, we were political, and the Muslims were, first of all, everybody had problems with them killing Malcolm. Okay, so that was a big issue. The split, what I would say, the black nationalists. Okay, but what I realized that as things happened, the Muslim brothers came to me. They said, "Brother," and this was a whole issue of armed struggle. Okay, they said, "Brother, you up here, you be talking so and so and so. Don't you realize that this devil is the biggest gun maker on the planet? How do you expect to be the biggest gun maker on the planet with guns? You need Muhammad." So what happened? It's funny. It's just like Dawa. When Dawa comes to you, the right Dawa, it's not your emotions. It's dealing with your reasoning, And at the time, I said, okay, slowly. So next thing happened. I was we moved from Oregon to McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota. I moved there with the new president of McAllister College, Arthur Fleming, and I was on campus. I had 3 jobs. I still had my GI Bill. I was processing the nation, still processing, right? And I had a position. I was teaching 2 classes there. And like any other brother, well, I'll tell you 2 things happened to me. I'm processing the nation, but I would mention 2 books that had, we read Message of the Black Man, and we already had, we had the Maulana Yusuf Ali Qurans, but we were told keep that book on the shelf, and the one who comes after me will let you open it. Right? This is what we were taught. We So, but 2 books that came to me that had, I would say, the main influence on my thinking. One was by the Sufi teacher, Hazrat Khan. He wrote a lot of books, but one book he wrote was called The Unity of Religious Ideas. And that hit me so much that I could see, first of all, in the Nation of Islam, I see the difference between what quote unquote Islam and al-Islam is in the world, what Elijah Muhammad was teaching. But what else they were teaching, it didn't seem to be affecting the people. Okay, that was one. The other was the Muqaddimah by Ibn Khaldun, which talked about the development of civilization, right? Now, keep in mind, the beauty for me was I'm in college now, I'm trying to learn something. This was a period of my greatest intellectual growth. I could go to the library and ask the librarian to order a book, and I got that book in the next week. Oh man, I went crazy, right? So anyway,
yeah, bro, that's how it was for me with my bookstore. I could order anything I wanted, man. If I hit me, I got it. It was like a candy store, man.
Yeah. So during that period of time, as I say, I was responsible for a counselor we had 75 Black students who come from all over the country. And at the time, McAllister College, believe it or not, we had scholars, Black scholars with PhDs in almost every subject there on campus. I was blessed to be with Willie Abraham, who was Dr. Nkrumah's secretary. Jerry Fisher, who was head of Asian Studies. He's the one that sponsored Imam Wati Muhammad's trip to China. James Stewart, who is still today one of the most living professors on slavery, antebellum South. Oh, there's just so many people that I was blessed. One who had more influence on me, probably profound influence, was a lady by the name of Hildegard Johnston, she carried, just to give you an idea where she come from, she carried numbers on her arm. She had come out of Germany, and she was the first one to really begin to deal with geography black a woman, PhD geography. She's the one who, you know, in Old Nation Islam, we talked about the whole world begin with Asia, right? And I learned from her the breakup of the original man, the plate technology, plate continental. I learned all of that, you know, and come to the conclusion, of course, that history is about geography and biography. Bottom line. Okay, so meanwhile, as a Muslim, though, we had a small community in Minnesota. When I came, we had 7 fruit, 7 FOI. I was the youngest. The next brother was like 40 years old. Okay, so I had to work with young people, getting them, you know, teaching and everything, which I was able to do. But at the same time, during that time, I would go to Chicago once a month. Okay, now I was still processed. I hadn't got my ex yet, but you know, you come in, you process it with a brother. And I used to bring back bean pies and do the business back in Minnesota. And finally, in October, well, I had started, we had formed the first community correctional center, halfway house in the state of Minnesota. And I know what the Muslims had done. I used some of the same tactics that we use with them. And I went to Chicago, and I thought that I was going to, you know, when I go there, I thought I was going to be, I met with the National Secretary one time, and I thought I was going to be the head of the, I'll come to Chicago, wanted to be, thinking I'm going to be the head of the Muslim prison program, right? And I got there in October 72, and the first thing happened is they put me in a hotel, and I was supposed to meet, at the time, Abbas Rasul, National Secretary. So I meet him in the salon restaurant. He asked me, brother, you know anything about farms? I said, no, sir. You know anything about real estate? I said, no, sir. You know anything about aircraft? I said, no, sir. Report to my office Monday morning at 8 o'clock, okay? Next thing I know, they had arranged for me. And at this time, the Nation of Islam in Chicago, this is 1972, we were still, our headquarters was still the Muhammad Speaks newspaper building, okay? And I was taking, we had just acquired a lot of residential property, some apartment buildings, and we were getting ready to break ground on what would have been in 1972, this is interesting, the largest minority contract given to a minority contractor that year. And that was us, to Mr. Ernest Bush, who we hired to build what became the sales and office building. And I was put in charge. First of all, I was put in charge of the property, which we had a group called Progressive Land Developers. Also, I'm the assistant national secretary, so I got to deal with national affairs. And then in the mosque, temple number 2, you got local stuff you got to deal with, right? So that was my position until Dharm Elijah Muhammad passed. I was in charge, assistant to the then National Secretary Abbas Rasul, and then the manager of Progressive Land Developers, the nation's property, including the farms and everything. And of course, at the demise of Dharm Elijah Muhammad, we ended up in probate court, okay? Which was just like you were mentioning before. This was a continuation of COINTELPRO, the J. Edgar Hoover plan. And the idea was they couldn't stop our teaching, same way like in World War II, they put us in jail because they said they couldn't stop our teaching. And if they didn't put us in jail in World War II, Black people wouldn't fight the Japanese. The same thing, they could not stop our teaching, but they knew that they could stop our economic activity. Okay, and that was part of the COINTELPRO, to sabotage the economy so that we would never, at the same time, 1979, which people forget, we signed the largest contract ever given to a minority firm, $22 million, with the Department of Defense. The idea being that we were going to create what was called American pouch food. We had an invention there. We had an invention there. And of course, once the Reagan people came in office, they canceled their contract. But we would have been, at that point, were that process to continue, we would have been where these people, Halliburton and all them people were when the war started, because we would be providing meals ready to eat for the military. But the idea was we have to stop this community, okay? We have to stop it. And the one way we can do it is culturally. And of course, we all of a sudden we in probate court, okay? What happened was when Mr. Muhammad died, he left 8 children by his wife, Clara, but he also left, I think it was, had to be maybe 8, and I think it had to be maybe 13, 11, I forgot the number, but it was a number of 13 others by different wives that he had, okay? Now, they had no legal status, these wives, but their children are the ones who entered into court, in the court system in Chicago, and initiated the probate case, saying that their brother and their cousin, Wallace, and the community had disinherited the Muhammad family, okay? And that's the root of the probate case. When we started 1976, we had a combined, people talk about an empire. Bill Cosby had more money than we had in 1976, but the reality is we had 60, when we did a consolidated balance sheet for the government, because we had $16 million in, you know, what we say assets. We had all the other processes, but I'm saying what we had clear. You would say our net, you know.
Right.
And when they went into court, we went through 3 different court cases. By the end of the court case, we owed $12 million, okay? And most of that money that went through these probate cases from that period of time was given to the lawyers. You can ask the Muhammad family how much they got. I doubt if they, but that was the situation. And it was, of course, it was politics involved, of course, with the split between Minister Farrakhan and the community, okay? And so from that point on, now keep in mind when this happened, we were slowly coming into our, I'm saying that it took really about 10 years for the community to come to terms with Islamic thought. We had to go through a bunch of stuff. And some people like to say it took 5 years, but that's not true. We had to get used to language. We had to get used to practices and everything. And it took about 10 years. And I remember because the imam gave a lecture, Gary.
That's what you think, okay? I think for some of it just started blossoming now.
Oh, I hear you. I'm just saying in general, you know.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because keep in mind what we had to go through. It was just amazing because, as I say, I came back, I came back to Chicago in 78. And that's when, from Minnesota, and that's when we were given the task of decentralizing the community, okay? And that was in 1978. And I was given the responsibility of dealing with the records, because we still had secretary, people still, you know, I had to deal with all of the records of all the communities, all the mosques from 1973. I had to go through all of their records. How much fish, how much this, how many Black people, how much so and so and so. And then the imam instructed us, which we already had, to divide the community into 6 regions. All right? We did that. Then we contacted the heads of each of those regions in 1978, and we started, we convened the first Council of Imams meeting in Chicago. And at that period of time, he named imams for this council. There were 6 from the 6 regions, and then there were others who were added to the Council of Imams for specific reasons. And this was to be the new structure of the community, allowing the imam, you know, to do whatever he wanted to do without having the administrative problems. So we set up, that was when we set up the Council of Imams. And the main lecture, I say this to people. Still, in 1977, we'd stopped Savior's Day. We had what we call Survival Day. And in 1977, the Imam gave a closed circuit telling us we were now called not the Nation of Islam, but the World Community of El Islam in the West. And the whole speech and lecture was his vision. Keep in mind, this is 1978. His whole expression was his vision for the future of this community. Once he established the Council of Imams, he gave in Atlanta, this is a document. I look at these as historical documents, okay? He gave the Atlanta lecture in November, I believe, in 1978, in which he laid out what we as a community, now we decentralized, he laid out the process, the ideas that we kept as a community. And this was number one, the Quran was the book. That's number one. Number two, he didn't use, we hated to use, and the Imam still never bought into it until much later. He stopped using it, but the idea was, we know the Sunni Shia are political terms. And the Imam said that we talk about the Sunnah, but he said, for us, we want to follow the uswa of the prayer of the Prophet Muhammad, his character. Okay, that was number two. Number three, he said that we know we're new Muslims here in America. We're responsible still to the Muslim world, and he said that we can. He called it ijma. We have to go along with the consensus of the scholars when we look at issues, Islamic issues in the Muslim world. But even when we're talking about that, we have to always take al-mizan, the middle path, okay, in our decisions. That was number three. Number four was that we, as Muslims, we recognize people of the book. Simple as that, okay? Number five, there was the issue of madhab. And anyone who recited the kalima shahadatain and performed what was wajib, we accepted them as Muslims, okay? The next was our life in America, constitutional. We should organize ourselves like other religious bodies, okay? And we have no conflict with the legal authority because the Muhammad Ali Supreme Court decision gave us freedom to practice our religion in America. The next was that we don't accept any foreign government. We don't support any foreign government, only the good that any of them do, foreign government or non-foreign government, okay? The next was that every year in our community, we are to have a ratification of the leadership of the imams. They got to come before the people and give a report, okay? This was all part of this is all part of a set of agreements that you could, that those of us who identify with the imam, this is what we do in terms of decision making. And of course, we do not accept violence as a means of political power. Now, what's that saying is there's no mention about somebody. Now, as Muslims, of course, somebody attacks us, that's the color of another horse's difference. But we as a community, we don't support that. We don't accept violence as a means of, and there was one more, which was, I believe, Bilal. The issue of Bilal, which is kind of interesting because he said, our people, we should identify with Bilal because it's more descriptive of us than black. You know, like what is black? Okay. And the interesting thing about that is that we were vilified by coming out with Bilal. The so-called other Muslims, they were saying we were still creating a sect, another sect of Islam, and we were criticized by other black Sunnis, saying, this was the reality, okay? But this is what happened, and that was now this today, with no change, is really the kind of the philosophy. If we're talking about a brand, these were things that were collectively agreed upon in 1978. You know.
But Al, let me.
Yes.
And I don't mean. Pardon me for stopping you,
No, it's
man.
cool. I probably talk too much.
I do want to talk about that Bilal, man. You know, about Bilal or Bilalian. You know, because I'm telling you, most recently, you know, going looking at some of the different hadiths and stories about Bilal ibn Rabah. You know, we know about him being Muezzin and treasure and giving out charity. And you hear about the story about Bilal with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu and his footsteps in paradise ahead of him, you know, and he was questioned why. He said, you know, for nothing, you're just praying.
Stayed in wudu.
but then after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu passed, you know, Bilal, you hear about the story that, you know, where you hear it paraphrased that Bilal was pressured to by Abu Bakr, and Bilal's question, Abu Bakr said, "Did you free me to be a slave to you or be a slave to Allah?"
That's right.
But you go back and look at the story a little bit further, a little bit more in depth. It's really behind that Bilal refused to take bayat with Abu Bakr after the passing of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said that, no, man, that's an innovation. He said Prophet Muhammad didn't take no bayat with no one. You know, and so that's when you came back with, when you said that with Muhammad, he came out with, we followed the uswa, the character of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, okay? And that relationship is with the Quran and with Allah. And he refused us to take bayat with anybody else, to have self-reliance, self-independence. You know,
I'm not quite familiar with that aspect. I know. Yeah.
But that's the part. That's the whole full story. What happened is that Umar came to him. You know, when Bilal refused to take bayat to him, Umar came to him and yanked him. And then that's when Bilal's questioning, man, why, man? If you want me to take the bayat, did you free me to be a slave to you or be a slave to Allah?
Right.
You know, and that same type of mentality we have as a people. After Imam Muhammad freed us from that mentality that we had on Elijah Muhammad, we refused to take bayat with loyalty to somebody else.
Yes.
You know, and I see that same spirit. That same spirit was Muslim. I heard the brothers in the Dar Islam, you know, and when they divided themselves, that was their spirit, that they refused to take bayat with somebody else other than their own innate self. So I think that's a characteristic within us as a people. And I think that's one of the things that we wanted to hide amongst it. And I didn't mean to stop you, but that's I just
no. This is good.
And there's Bilalians. Oh, that's the other thing, Bilal. You know, in scholarly, when what is it? Every 75 years, they allow in the census records, but some of the scholars got access. That when it comes to that 1980 census record, you're gonna see a lot of people. When they say what's your nationality, they're gonna say Bilalians. Because in the 1980 census, that we was heavily saying we're identifying ourselves as Bilalians.
That's right.
And so I know in the census record it's going to be. And I found recently, Bilal, there's a Muslim that's a judge that's a Bilalian. There's a brother that's his birth certificate say he's a Bilalian. You know, I had a son, one of my oldest son questioned me, said, "Daddy, what am I?" I said, "Man, you're African American." He said, "No, I ain't. I'm a Bilalian." I said, "Wow, you're right. That's what I taught you years ago." You know, and so this is where I think the mind was right on, point on, by identifying us as that part of our nature within us, and we call everybody. Bilal called everybody.
That's right. That was the purpose, to call everybody back to Tawheed.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. To a human call, and you
Mhm.
don't need no intercessor. You don't need no priest or no imams or nobody like that. You need a relationship with Allah, and then that guidance. Yes, you need guides, along the way to help you out. But Allah is close to you than your jank. And the knowledge and the hikmah that the Imam gave us, he gave us the tools to have that relationship. And to have understanding that, to bring it as what he said, like as that light moisture hit the earth, he gave us the spirituality to have the understanding to make it rain, to manifest. I think, therefore I am. Think and manifest, prayer and do, prayer and action. Now, what did you do for the, you said at one point, I'm going back up, you said with the Imam, you help decentralize the organization. How was that
Yes.
process?
Huh?
How was that
He said,
process?
well, we had to have a series of meetings with all the imams, and the idea was that, as I say, they would have a council, a majlis, and that would be the people who would be responsible for running the community. Okay, and the imam, he would convene initially the majlis, and then he told them if they wanted him to participate, they would invite him, to speak with them. And that was today, to me, as I say, those two documents, the World Community of Islam in the West, Aims, Purpose, and Goals, and the Atlanta lecture of 1978 that people can pull up. Those are the two things that set the course for those of us who were students, I say, and for the community. Those are the ones that the imam's desire, imam's what he saw for the growth of the community. Okay, now he's criticized, of course, in many ways. Most of the criticism I've seen, though, has been political. Has been about his politics. Okay, this is my own particular interpretation, but this is what our community, and it makes sense because I remember asking him about this concept of Khalifa, okay? Because when I first came to Chicago to work with him, I came back to Chicago. I had one book with me, and that was one book that I used. That was Muslim Administration under Omar, okay? And it talked about the development of different institutions. There was another good book too, when we began talking about Mujaddid, was Alam al-Dudi, The History of the Revivalist Movement in Al-Islam. And right now, just like Al-Islam, it takes on the flavor of the particular locale and the particular culture. And the Imam's idea was to develop leadership in each of these areas. You don't need somebody coming from, Chicago telling you what to do. At the same time, his last lecture to us, he told us that most of the people, you're not going to get most of the people. He said most of the people are not going to do anything but sit around and complain and criticize. They're not going to take responsibility for themselves. This is why, and this is the burden, this is the problem we got. We still had this Jesus complex, and he'd always worked against that. He was always promoting leadership, independent thinking, independent leadership, with the idea that these principles that I just outlined, we would loosely adhere to those particular principles, and that was where, this is what I saw. Okay, that's just my own analysis of the situation. Okay. Brother Amir? Brother Amir? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you guys hear? Can you hear
I
me?
can hear you. This is Hakeem. I can hear you.
Oh, okay, brother Hakeem. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Where are you from?
Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, okay. I was there. I was in Atlanta from what, 76?
Savannah. Savannah.
Huh? Oh, you're in Savannah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I was in Atlanta from 97 to 2000.
Oh,
I was
okay.
in Atlanta last year. And I was commuting from there to Tampa, Florida. Yeah. Savannah, okay. Yes, sir.
Our email was Imam Majid Ali.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. It's good to meet you, my brother.
Good meeting you. Yes, sir. Alhamdulillah. I mean, I've gotten a lot about, I'm a collector. And I got a pretty large collection on the Nation of Islam. But, a lot of this material is, a lot of those people that these photographs are gone now. So a lot of the information went with them. So the whole thing is trying to put things back together again.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, that's what because I don't know if you caught the first the session that I did. I got the couple of letters connected to Dr. C. Lincoln, and of course, Dr. C. Lincoln is a important component to the Nation of Islam, but a lot of research hadn't been done with him, dealing with him and the Nation of Islam. So, but he was the one that got Malcolm started really speaking publicly. He spoke at college in Boston, and the next thing you know, Dr. C. Lincoln was like a promoter. He was going around speaking to all these colleges, and eventually he asked Dr. C. Lincoln, "Can you connect me with a black college?" And that's how that thing got started with Malcolm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of important.
Dr. Lincoln, I came here. I'm in Albania, but I came here from Duke. I was doing history there with and Dr. Lincoln. They're two very informative videos. One right there in Atlanta. He did at Emory University. It's a 9-part presentation he did at Emory with Imam Waqi Muhammad.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yes, sir.
And the other is him sitting there at Duke in 1994 with Dr. Cornell and Dr. C. Lincoln and listen to the interview with the Imam. Those are two really kind of, as far as C. Lincoln is concerned, those are two very important because he knew the community,
right?
And he was respected. He was respected very well by the Imam and people in the community. The closest to us, of course, I think of all of their, how did the Imam used to call him? He said, he's the only outsider that's an insider. And that was the late Dr. Great Scholar, Suleiman and Yang.
Oh, yeah.
That brother. He, because mostly everybody, even today, when you look at our history, they're still looking at us in the political sense. There were very few people who saw, even in what we call the first, scholars who saw the religious content in the Nation of Islam. Right. C. Lincoln was one, okay? Right. And of the scholars alive today, there are a couple of PhDs. One is written by a young man at Harvard Seminary called The Quran Comes to America. He did his PhD. The other is Jeff Diamond, who wrote about our community's relationship with foreign elements. And the beauty of that is how he was able to show how the man was able to negotiate and keep us out of all of these traps and to keep our independence. And I mean, it's a beautiful, if you send me, you send me your email, I send them to you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because they are.
You were talking, and very informative. A whole lot of, most of the information I heard, just bits and pieces of it. But you know what really struck me about Imam Muhammad was, and you, I think you touched on it, was if you think about right now, what we're doing right now is important and very important. But you think about what people are thinking about right now is, when am I going to get my shot? And when is my check going to be in the mail for my stimulus?
That's
So
real.
now, the thing about Imam Muhammad was, he knew how to deal with that. He could deal with what you want right now, but yet and still deal with what you need for now and later. That's what made him unique. And you know, even with my talk, you know, I tried to, you know, get the point across that even with my collection, the most important thing is, how is this going to help you today?
Right.
And I think that's the main struggle that you have, I have, Brother Amir have. What is this going to do for me today? You know, so and then some of it you can't answer, because I remember Imam Muhammad said that this brother asked Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I see what you got, but when am I going to get mine? And
right, that's right.
Honorable Elijah Muhammad refused to answer him. He ignored him. And see, the whole thing was, he was getting what he needed today, but he just didn't see it.
Well, you know, it's funny. Amir said this earlier, and it kind of makes it's another twist. But I remember the Imam said, the Quran came to us as a thief in the night, and we did not know what it was until it had already taken its effect upon us. And that was so profound. And now going back to what we're talking about in terms of society, we always use the terminology, the four rivers, right? The cultural order, the educational order, the government order, and the business order. And I remember this was like in 1975. I remember it's plain as day. The headline of the Muhammad Speaks newspaper was the pomp and glitter of this life. And the Imam, just like Amir talk, he used to teach for 2 hours in the masjid in Chicago. And he came, this was in 1975. It couldn't have been no more than 2 months. And it wasn't even a month. It would have been maybe about 2 months after he came in office. But he talked about that headline, that cartoon. He said, brothers and sisters, everything that you see, we're going to lose. Right. Okay? He said, all of this big so-and-so, it had its purpose, okay? But now we're going to lose it, and this is what he said, we're going to be out of sight for a long time. And the reason being, I'm planting a new seed, and it's going to take time for this seed to germinate. He said it's going to take a long time. He said, but once this seed germinates, the sun is going to shine on this community, you know? And I remember he furthered up. Now, this was 1975. He furthered up in 1978. I never forget this. He group of lectures at one shot in Cleveland called Circumcision of the Mind for new intelligence flow, okay? Now, this was all telling us that our influence, just like Elijah Muhammad, who said that if what he teaches in season, it will bear fruit. Okay, people today still looking at some kind of monolithic idea, not understanding the wide influence that, as Elijah Muhammad said, the ideas will be absorbed into the body politic, okay? And that's been absorbed into the minds of Black people. By 1970, everybody was, you know, but now the other interesting thing about it is that who is the perfect example of these teachings that we see manifest in America? The first time I looked at Barack Hussein Obama, I said, well, wait a minute. First of all, Mia, you bear witness to this. The dude walked like Benjamin. He on a rostrum like Malcolm. I say, we know where his influence come from. Right. You know, I mean, it's amazing, you know, but now only us could see something like that. He'll bear witness to it. He bear witness to it. But I'm just saying, you know, the influence that that we've had, you know, and this was, you know, I loved him, man, but we were friends. And I'll say this, people might disagree, but, you know, I was always, sometime I would have to tell him things that hurt him because I'm his brother and he's my leader and I see something, you know, and I want to tell him this, you know. And I remember this was in 2005. He finished his last tour of speaking about education.
Right.
And I was telling him, I said, brother, man, you know, sometimes our enemies, we love you. We know your language, but sometimes your language, somebody takes your language and they can use it against you. He said, what you mean? I said, for instance, you were talking about, we're not going to teach the Quran. We're going to infuse it into the curriculum. Now, for us, we know what that meant, right? But our enemies would say, see, he's saying he's not going to teach the Quran. No, what the man was saying that we need to, we're going to teach the Quran. It should be infused in all of the curriculum. It shouldn't be, you know, now we're going to separate Islamic studies. You're going to study that, but this is what he wanted to see. He wanted actually to see. And when I think about the genius of Imam, among other things, but two things come to mind to me. Number one, his genius, well, first of all, we know people get mad when I say this, but it's true. Elijah Muhammad ran the Nation of Islam like Stalin ran Russia. That's the reality, okay? And the Imam had to come and deal with that, right? And so the genius of him was decentralizing the community, but more important than anything else, the man was able, I remember he said this when he was still teaching us, he was saying how religion, this when he was talking about religion means alive. Remember those lectures? And words make people. He was saying how religion today is like going to the supermarket and it's on the last shelf on the back with cobwebs and everything else, because that's what happened with religion, right? So what, and this is what people don't understand. People sit up, I've been around all of the, what I say, the Islamic landscape in America, okay, and particularly immigrant and dealing with them and everything. And it's interesting for people who, you know, they don't even know, people ask me sometimes, they don't even know the depths of the Imam's Arabic language. But why he's going to tell us, we just learning English. I ain't going to go into, you know, but what I'm saying is, you know, that the genius to me is that he was able to take Quranic concepts and translate them into contemporary social thought. Always, if you notice, when he's giving us a Quranic idea, he'll compare it, or he'll find a corresponding part in the Bible. So he's talking to an audience, you know, that's not familiar, but when he gives it in social context, the people don't even know they're getting the Quran. Because I remember him saying, what he's given us, we should be able to talk to anybody about anything without using any religious terminology.
That's right.
And that's the same way, you know, that's the same way. It's a continuation of our salesmanship of Muhammad speaks on the street. When we come to the so-called lost path, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? Isn't it nice? You gradually get them to agree on things. You get them in that mind, so then you slip in what you want. That's
right. Wait, but to me, that's what, brother. Not to cut you off. But my wife and I.
This is lovely.
But my wife and I own a store in the downtown area, and it's 95% tourists, and most of them, almost all of them, are Caucasians. And a lot of them come from all over the world or whatever. And I don't go in there much, but when I go in, I have conversations with them, and some of them will be Christians, whatever. And when they leave, they feel obligated to buy something because they say, boy, we really enjoyed that conversation. I never told them I was a Muslim.
Right.
They have no idea.
That's the dawah. That's what people don't realize, man. You know, that's what people don't realize when I've been to these international Dawa conferences, they talk about you go to the people. I say, look, Dawa is one-on-one.
Right.
People like you, you're a decent person. They want to know what you all about. That's what it is. It's
Right.
not, I mean, it's part of it, you know, giving people literature and talking to them. But in this day and time, it's still a one-on-one thing, you know.
Right.
And
the main thing is people are looking for help.
That's right.
They're looking for help and answers.
That's right.
And like you say, if you put that covering on it, they're not going to want it. But if you just give it to them, just like you said, like
common language.
That's right. They'll be thanking you. And
right.
And I was talking to a man. He was telling me he was in World War II and he had a problem with black people. He owned a nursery and flower shop, and we had a long conversation. And at the end of the conversation, I said, "You know, I'm a Muslim." He said, "I don't care. I enjoyed that conversation. Thank you."
It's real.
Yeah.
There's something else too I want to share, which will give you. We knew the man was a visionary, but I just come back to Chicago. We were meeting to, as I say, reorganize, and we would have meetings. We would have meetings from 9 o'clock in the morning in Masjid Muhammad, sometime to after Isha prayer, trying to reorganize the community. The first month I was there, we didn't even have a chance. We weren't even dealing with anything new. We were dealing with people who still had grievances that had never been talked to from Malcolm's time, okay? And the imam had to come in and the imam had to deal with them and so and so and so. So we had these meetings, and one night we were leaving, and I asked the imam, this time I was real hyper. I was ready, you know, I was fired up, ready to go. And he would cool me down. The man has so much patience, brother. And I asked him, I said, brother, man, is everybody crazy? This is what we in the, you know, we have these meetings, right? And I never forget, he put his hand on my arm. He said, Bilal, what you have to understand is this. What the miracle is what we have been through as a people for the last 400 years, that we have as many people as sane as we do.
That's right.
I said, wow. Then he told me something. Now, keep in mind, this is 1978. He said, you know something, pretty soon, we're going to have to lower our wings to these poor Caucasians. Now, I'm sitting, the man would say something I couldn't understand. I filed away. 5 years later, I understood what he said, right? And I'm thinking in my mind now, in my mind, he can read you, you know. But I'm thinking in my mind, we just stopped calling these people devils. And now you sitting up talking about, well, you know, the concept of lowering your wings. I said, man, what? But, you know, I couldn't. And of course, he tuned in on me. In 1978, he said, understand this. You ever been in a forest? I said, yeah. I said, I lived in Oregon. I've been in a logger camp. You ever been in California, big trees? I said, yes, sir. You see those big trees in California? I said, yes, sir. Some of them got 50 feet circumference. Some of them are 900 years old. I said, yes, sir. He said, when you cut one of those trees, they're dead, right? I said, yes, sir. He said, but it takes a long time for the tree to fall, because as it's falling down, it takes a path of desolation, it power lines, so and so and so. It takes a long time for it to hit the ground. He say, this is white supremacy, 1978. White supremacy is over, brother. He say, but it's going to take a long time, because people been ruling for 1,000 years. When it hits, it's going to take a long time for them to come to that conclusion. He said, and when they do, I never forget, we're going to have to expect to see, he called it epileptic behavior on their part. And that's 1978. And what do we live to see in this day and time? We got more dope fiends now. We got more dope fiends now in Vermont and New Hampshire than we ever had in Harlem.
Right. That's right.
I mean, and think about the vision, and it's so true. This is what we expect to see: epileptic behavior on half these people, because it's all over. It's
Okay.
all over. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, I always consider myself really blessed, not for what I have materially, but for what the people that I meet, like you, Brother Amir, because y'all brothers are real important to me and the whole society, you know, and some brothers say, well, we need to get all in due time.
Right.
And that's the way I look at it, all in due time. It's just like brother
And
said,
it's a reason for us being decentralized. People
that's right.
People have to understand that.
That's right. Brother said, man, we need to get more people coming to the masjid. I said, well, you know, my thoughts are, that's a good idea. But when you start looking at some of the people, they're coming with their problems.
Right.
Yeah.
And the work is not in the masjid, the work is in the society.
There you
The
go.
masjid,
That's right.
the masjid is recharge, is a recharge station.
That's right.
You know, it's different if we lived in an Islamic society, got a masjid on every street. Okay, that's a different situation. But basically, the work is to be done. We are to take what we know and infuse it with like-minded people.
There you go.
And get the work done. And we've got to take responsibility for everybody else. It's only a handful of people. It's going to happen. And the Imam has already told us that. And in so many ways, even the old Nation of Islam lessons that we used to have about the 5%, the 10%, and the 85%, they still have some relevance to today when you look at the world. Straight up. You know.
Yeah, for real. For real. For real.
Yeah, yeah. And as I say, same thing with the Quran. The Quran is telling us about what? Believers, disbelievers, and hypocrites. And all we need to do today, we just get a scorecard. We say, oh yeah, I remember that. Okay, that's number so and so.
And that's how it is now. And what's blowing my mind, everybody that you can talk with, that see, like you see, it's like, wow. Because after reading the Quran so long, you come with a Quranic mind.
Yes, sir.
You see things in a Quranic way, as the Quran say. It is just,
yes, sir. And what we seeing right now, is just a repeat. You know, this the only thing different is the virus, which has fundamentally placed the entire world quiet as kept. The entire world right now is under martial law, quiet as kept, if we really think about it. Yeah. Because you know, that's really what we're looking at. But you know, the other thing though, and I know this sounds archaic, but you know, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us about the 4 great judgments of America and what America was going to end up having to face, the wrath of Allah. Right. You know, people got to understand that.
No, that's clear. And once again, the Quran, you know, you see the story about Suleiman, you know, his great empire, you know, all the jinns, all the big people, all the big bad people was helping maintain it. But there was little gnats, something unseen was tearing at its inside. And when that staff fell, it's collapsed. And this is what you see still happening here. You're right in front of us. You know what,
brother? I think, like you say, a lot of things, you know, we can learn a lot from each other. And a lot of times, even with our own family members, certain things they can't see. Like you see an abundance of movie now showing and real stories about the head of the Klan eventually turning around and getting out of the Klan and helping Black people in the neighborhood. They just made a movie like that. But see, we knew that all of the time, because in the Quran it says, what is written upon them, their soul, they were arm's length from hell. And what was written, I've seen this movie, I forgot what his name, Forrest Whitaker. He was a priest, and it was in South Africa. And this white guy that was, they just went around killing, and they imprisoned him, and eventually he took up for a Black guy in jail right before he was killed. But the whole thing was, and I knew people that were looking at it, they didn't realize this was already written in the Quran. What was written upon their souls took over. They were arm's length, and they became the people of heaven. So, and you know, we know, you know, you can't make a final judgment on nobody. Basically, that's what it's saying.
Sure, you're
That's
right.
right.
First shall be last, and last shall be first. But there's some principles that you can see. Like for me, man, I think with a lot of them, a lot of those people, man, we got to watch what we eat. If you go hunting, killing raw, then you know that gets in you. That blood. These are things, man, that we got to watch what we eat. You know, that process, man, get you thinking kind of crazy because there's something different innate in them. You know, like you got this one guy in African American history over 1,200 years ago, Al Jazeera. He said he wrote over 1,200 books. In one of his books, he describes blacks. Let me see if I got it. Alhamdulillah, I got it right in front of me. He says that this is what he say about blacks. He said over 1,200 years ago, they're very generous. They have a very natural gift, like generous. We're very forgiving for all the hatred and bigotry they've done. We're very generous. Right. They have a natural gift for rhythmic dancing. Michael Jackson, James Brown, come on, we Cobb Calloway, so forth. The best singers, Bilal ibn Rabah, the corner of the dawn, they express themselves in a lively manner. Malcolm, Muhammad Farrakhan, so many others, Frederick Douglass, physically stronger. They're always happy, smiling, and optimistic is how they describe us as black people over 1,200 years ago. And some of these personality traits still exist today, as well as some of those personality traits of Bilal ibn Rabah still exist today. And that is our role to call everyone to prayer. Be one of giving and charity. Elijah Muhammad said one of the things that we do right now because of this pandemic. Matter of fact, y'all said something about the pandemic. You know, the Quran says, "Well, out of darkness comes light." You know, and there's times that we all got to go in our cave. You know, we call our house a man cave. You know, but this pandemic made us all go into a cave. So this is the best time for us to take time, quiet time, to go reflect within yourself, to purify yourself, die so you can live, unfold, reawaken. You know, there's less stress. You don't have to worry about running out, getting a job and everything. Yes, there's some other type of stress, but there's that lack of running out every day. You know, that you could take some quiet time and reflect. If we take that opportunity for that, but if our souls are scattered and like a bird, you know, our cage is all shattered, we can't have no quiet time. Right. So I think that what the Imam gave us in that with the Quran and the words of wisdom, he said what he said. He says follow things to his most logical conclusion. You know, to be always rational and reasoning and balance in our approach. And I think these are some of the tools that have been able to help us to govern and guide our ship through these changes that we're going through as a people.
Well, you know, related to what you were saying, it's something that just came to me as a collector. And I remember Imam Muhammad was saying how Caucasians have changed a lot, even though we're still having a problem with a lot of them, but a lot of them have changed.
Yeah.
And you know, I got to thinking about some things that he said about Frederick Douglass. And, you know, I found out recently that they have a abolitionist museum in upstate New York. And, you know, I was wondering, you know, what's the reason for them having the abolitionist museum and why they are so involved? So I asked one day I was in the store. I asked a Caucasian German engineer. I said, what do you attribute the difference between Europeans and European Americans? He said Europeans are less sensitive and they're more intellectually inclined. And he said European Americans are more warmer and less intellectually inclined. Now, that's not necessarily so, but what the point I'm trying to get to is this. European Americans cannot explain why they are so different from everybody else, except by having to tell the story of how we came in contact with the African.
Right.
A clear example is the North was losing the war because Lincoln main objective was the national government, and they were losing. So Frederick Douglass eventually influenced them. He said, look, you're going to have to change the theme of this war to a moral standpoint. And when he changed that theme to a moral, they began to start winning the war.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those things we've already been taught through Imam Muhammad, through the Quran and all. But the point I'm really trying to make is really intelligent European Americans know they cannot explain why they are so different, except for, look, it must be our contact with these people that we brought over here.
That's right.
And they know it. And you know, a lot of us think, well, they are doing this because they want to be more inclusive. They want to be, yeah, that's part of it. But the main part is we can't explain this, but no other way. It must be because we came in contact with these people and they have changed us, and that's why we're not like other Europeans. Mm-hmm. And see, a lot of our people don't know that. They're thinking that, okay, well, these people are just being more warmer, which is part of it, and they're being inclusive, but that's not what it is. They know they can't explain themselves. They're new creation just like we are.
And you know, it's so interesting you say that, because living in Europe, Europeans, I take one example, our creative artists, musicians, writers, actors, in the 40s, they were in Europe, they were received for artistic merit. People go to the Kennedy Center. You can look at footage from the 40s, from the 50s, even from the early 60s, of all types of people, jazz bands, Art Blakey, Miles Cole, all these different people, Dizzy. When they performed in Europe, they performed in the largest concert halls. People came there dressed formally, okay? Because, and it's ironic, but the reality is, the Europeans, even today, they say the only culture in America got is what you people gave them. They tell me that. They say, for instance, take classical music. They say classical music we got. Right. Your classical music is jazz. Right. We love what you all have been able to do with it, the virtuosity. I mean, you know, that's just, it's amazing, you know. Right. And then I always use Miles Davis. I always use Miles Davis as kind of one example, since they had a movie about him. When he went over there to France and he was treated, you know, he met all the intellectuals, Picasso, Jean-Paul Sartre, because all our artists, they were treated as what they were in Europe. They were treated as artists, man. I mean, really, you know, fantastic artists, almost like rock stars, really. Right. It's real, you know. And I remember that Miles, he come back to New York, and he's just another little black end. That's right. And I can understand why, you know, that's when he said, oh man, that's why he went to that dope, which everybody else was doing at the time. But that's the reality. Right. You know, here you come back home and you got to play in a fundamentally a basement outhouse. Right. That's what those musicians were playing in, man. They had to play 6. Think about this, man. 6 a night. You got 6 performances every night. Correct. And don't let me start talking about jazz musicians, because the reality of that even is the influence of Islam on jazz.
That's what I wanted to talk about. Come on with it. Just give us 10 minutes of that one.
Okay. First of all, if you look at the Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, it's Arabic, Da, Ra, Mi, and that is the Italian notation people got from the Arabic, okay? Right. Mostly our musicians, beginning with, I think the first one who went over there was Art Blakey. He went over there in 1944, became a Muslim, and took the name Abu Buhania. And he come back in the 40s, Dizzy Gillespie and Art Blakey, all of those brothers, they had accepted at the time what was the Ahmadiyya Muslims, okay?
Right.
And they had become, many of them had become Muslims. But you a jazz group, you playing in a club that the Jews own, and they selling drinks, and you playing the music. They don't want to hear nothing about your name is Muhammad no more, because they know, oh, we bring the Muslims, we ain't gonna make no money off these drinks, pushing
Right.
this thing. So, but people forget that, to me, now this is me, jazz history, Mount Rushmore, you got Duke Ellington as the greatest composer, you got Louis Armstrong as the greatest soloist, and you got Charlie Parker, Charles, as those are the top three, okay?
Right.
And the interesting thing, I lived in North Carolina, the interesting thing about them is, under that, coming from North Carolina, under Duke Ellington, you got Thelonious Monk. Under Louis Armstrong, you got Dizzy Gillespie. And of course, under Charlie Parker, you got John Coltrane. So the music, and what Art Blakey did, they had, most of those brothers, they called themselves messages. The idea was it was going to be the jazz messages. They were talking about, in a subtle sense, Islam, okay? Right. And they're pictures from Ebony magazine in 1953, that there were 200 jazz musicians following what they call Mohammedanism. That's what they called it at the time, okay? But the brothers, they, that was an influence. I remember this, I grew up in Harlem, and I was in the neighborhood, Sugar Hill, Jackie McLean, Sonny Rollins, all of them. They were just guys in the neighborhood. You didn't know you dealing with world-class people. Right. That was just what was in the environment, right? But the one that's closest to, who even today, I always say, next to my mother's heartbeat, embedded himself on my nervous system. And that was he and brother Omar Kareem, late, referred to as Jackie McLean. Right. Listen to him. Listen to his development as a musician, during that period of time. And all of those brothers, they were all touched by Islam. And I remember when I would see him from time to time, and I remember this had been like in 91. He came out to Minnesota, and I was asking him the question. I said, how did the music? He said, Bilal, we all come out to church. What we realized, though, that we could glorify God without words. And this is basically what they were saying. Because if you look at all the musicians, everybody came out to church at the time. Right. And, that speaks to something about music, which we know is not haram, okay? But it speaks to the idea that I always tell people, I don't care what country you come from, you cannot, I don't care what religion you're from, there's no way possible that you can come into Harlem on a Sunday morning and sit in one of them churches and hear that choir and not be moved spiritually, okay? Right. Because the whole idea was to glorify God. Right. This is why Ray Charles and them ran into so much problem saying Cook, even Aretha Franklin, because the church people said, you can't take that music. They call it the devil's music, right? You're going to take the music from its high level of love for God. Now you're going to make a love for that man, love for that woman, and that was, of course, that was the situation. But it's so real, the influence in every major jazz musician. Charlie Parker had a Muslim name. They never tell you that. Bird had a Muslim name. I can name at least 100 musicians who professionally used their, what we call slave names, but were Muslims, right. Okay? But they knew, particularly at that time, they weren't going to get any play, and they continued living their lives. But the music is kind of the subtext of our history, and as I say before, it's one of the reasons across the world, I say the so-called ulema, they have issues with music, right? But Sister Layla Faruqi, one of the most beautiful published books is the Cultural Atlas of Islam that Dr. Ismail Faruqi and his wife did. It's a big, thick book, cost $75, hardcover, green cover book. If you ever get a chance to get that, because she was an expert on music, and she spoke about the music being the cultural arts, being the cultural expression of the Muslims. And you got everybody got a different type of music. Somebody sitting up saying music. No, the problem was, what is the purpose of you using the music?
That's right.
Because
There you go.
I had, I was principal of schools, and I had to deal with all different people from different madhabs, and some people come and say music is haram. I asked them this question. In Saudi, I'd probably get my head cut off. But don't the birds